Nikola Tesla, the genius, his legend, and his inventions. Anyone who truly knows the story of Nikola Tesla would tell you how they gaped in awe and shook their head in sadness. The awe would be because of how great Tesla's innovative mind was, and the sadness would be about what could have been possible if Nikola Tesla had received all the necessary attention and support he needed and rightfully deserved. Nikola Tesla was a genius, forgotten in his time by the commercial pressures of other inventors like Thomas Edison. He was a true hero of science that sadly never came to the prominence he deserved. The good news is that, in recent years, his memory is being preserved. Great online campaigns like the Oatmeal's incredible feat to help build a Tesla museum have helped this inventor to be recognized as one of the true geniuses of the beginning of the great electricity revolution. Wireless energy. One of his greatest inventions that never saw the light of day because he could not find funding is the Wardenclyffe Tower, or better known as the Tesla Tower. This genius believed that he was able to find a way to transmit energy through the air, just as today we are able to transmit data wirelessly. Thanks to many towers around the world that serve as transmitters. This was a dream so big that, having found the resources to create a prototype with his first tower in his laboratory in Shoreham, New York, he would have changed the world forever with one of the evolutions that we can only dream of and maybe compare with the internet or jet engines. Tesla managed to see his tower completely finished, but in the absence of money, it was demolished in 1917. As a data, Tesla showed that the transmission of energy was possible by electrostatic induction in 1891. A world with wireless charging. Imagine a world where Tesla was considered what he is, a genius whose inventions could change the world. Imagine that the Wardenclyffe Tower was completed and that Nikola Tesla secured the funding to create a company to manage the thousands of wireless charging towers around the world. We would live in a world so different, in which decades could have advanced in many aspects. Imagine that Tesla managed to make it possible to transmit energy between America and Europe, could have created electric planes able to cross the Atlantic decades before Charles Lindbergh managed to cross the ocean non-stop between New York and Paris. We could have changed the Industrial Revolution, created in the 19th century, that was moving to coal by a much cleaner system. Renewable energies could have taken on a much more important role than they have today, if the Tesla towers would need a lot of energy to be able to distribute it. It would take large power stations to generate it, such as large hydroelectric power stations. But if the renewable power take over, it could have been possible to create a truly clean and wireless electric charging system. Just think of any electrical device you have right now, from the device you are reading this from to your everyday home appliances, and try hard to imagine a world where you would never know what a charging cable is, or how it feels for your device to run out of battery. Imagine electric planes flying through the skies, millions of cars without emitting CO2, industries capable of operating without the need to pollute the air, innovations of all kinds of technology in our body that would not need batteries, such as robotic legs for injuries. That was probably the world that would have been had Tesla got the support he needed, but he didn't.
Pocket change to a man of your
Damn it,
wealth.
Tesla.
Please.
Wireless electricity for the world, and all one needs is a cheap little device to receive it. How do you charge people for that? There's no goddamn profit in it, you vainglorious idiot.
His plan focused more on serving humanity than enriching his pockets. Many investors didn't see the big picture, but rather focused on what they would make at the moment. It was easy for the more money-making idea of Thomas Edison to fly, even though it was inferior. At the end, it was all about the money, not the service. Earthquake machine. It was a quiet day in 1898 when the residents of several blocks of buildings in the crowded Chinese and Italian neighborhoods of Manhattan began to experience a tremor that soon began to shake all the buildings and shatter glass, causing people to run scared on the streets of New York. The police were forced to rush in to assess the situation. After checking that the quake was confined to that small part of the city and suspecting who could be the cause, the police sent 2 of their agents to 46 East Houston Street. Just before entering the building, they noticed that the tremor stopped, and when they passed through the door of a laboratory, they were received by a tall and thin man with a mustache, elegantly dressed and armed with a hammer. The man calmly told them, "Gentlemen, I am sorry. You are just a trifle too late to witness my experiment. I found it necessary to stop it suddenly and unexpectedly in an unusual way. However, if you will come around this evening, I will have another oscillator attached to a platform, and each of you can stand on it. You will, I am sure, find it a most interesting and pleasurable experience. Now you must leave, for I have many things to do. Good day." Of course, that man was Tesla. The cause of that incident had been a small electromechanical oscillator with which Tesla was experimenting that day for his research into mechanical resonance. After placing it on a pillar of his laboratory, the vibration caused by the instrument began to spread throughout the underground of the building to neighboring buildings, creating chaos among its neighbors. So absorbed and fascinated was Tesla that he did not decide to end the experiment until he noticed that his entire laboratory was shaking vigorously. Another of his experiments he would tell a few years later to a journalist. This time, Tesla decided to experiment outside his laboratory, and after locating a building under construction in the Wall Street neighborhood, which was still a metal skeleton, he placed the oscillator on one of the beams and activated it. In a few minutes, the entire structure of 10 floors of the building began to vibrate, frightening the workers and causing the police to make an appearance again. Before anyone could realize what was happening, Tesla deactivated the device, put it in his pocket, and continued on his way. In the same interview, the inventor said that in less than an hour he could knock down the Brooklyn Bridge, and he even claimed that with a suitable machine and dynamite, he would be able to split the Earth in 2. Possible cause of Tunguska 1908 explosion.
People who observed that thought the end of the world had come, Judgment Day, divine intervention.
Among the many theories that were developed to uncover what happened in Tunguska in the year 1908, many blame what happened to Nikola Tesla. It all started when Tesla proclaimed to everyone that he had a weapon popularly known as the death ray, able to send an electromagnetic ray across hundreds of kilometers and to destroy a great part of Earth, hinting that with this weapon, he could break the Earth as if it were an apple. He sent a letter to Woodrow Wilson, the American president at the time, in which he explained the operation of his machine and claimed to have proof of its proper functioning, which was ideal for destroying large tracts of land, and would only make one condition, which is that the use of this invention was made for defensive purposes. He recounted in this letter that in 1908, while his friend Robert Peary tried to reach the North Pole, he sent one of his death rays to fall to the west of where his friend was, and a few days before sent a telegram that essentially notified Peary that he would send a lightning close to where Peary was, and that Peary would tell him how everything had gone. His intention was that his friend and the crew he was leading would observe an intense luminosity at dusk. However, nothing happened. Neither Perry nor his crew saw anything. The curious thing is that the same day that Perry theoretically arrived at the North Pole, about 16,000 kilometers away, the Tunguska explosion occurred.
The Tunguska disaster changed our view of the world and our place in the cosmos, because until then we thought that we were basically very protected.
As President Wilson ignored him, there were indications that he sent this same letter to other world leaders, who also stopped taking the Tesla invention seriously. To continue with this theory, we must remember that in that decade, there were several explosions of lesser severity and intensity in different parts of the Earth, which some audacious people attributed to the Tesla's death ray, based on Tesla's comment on how powerful it was. Do you remember the earthquake experiment we discussed some paragraphs away, which he did in his laboratory, showing how powerful his inventions were? Months after this experiment, he commented that he could destroy the Earth if he wanted to. With this type of apocalyptic discourse that today we would describe as terrorist, the governments and those capable of financing it backed out, in fear of what he was capable of. Another endorsement that his experiments were very real is that he managed to create energy of 4 million volts with the intention of lighting all the lamps in 40 kilometers around. The pity is that although he succeeded, his laboratory exploded. If Tesla was indeed behind the Tunguska incident, it would have been an error. It might also further explain why his Wardenclyffe Tower was destroyed in 1917, and why he gave little comment about that. If this were true, it would have been an unintentional mistake, and must have caused a huge blow to him. Particle beam weapon. This invention started from what Tesla called Teleforce, an idea Tesla said he conceived after studying the Van de Graaff generator.
If every nation equips themselves with this, not one would dare fire the first shot.
An electrostatic machine that uses a moving belt to accumulate large amounts of electrical charge in the interior of a hollow metal sphere.
I had made appointments to unveil this at the World Peace Conference in Geneva.
The production of X-rays or experiments in particle physics and nuclear physics could be applied with the generator. According to Tesla, the particle beam weapon, also known as death ray or peace ray, was a weapon that would be capable of being used against an entire ground infantry or for anti-aircraft purposes.
Tesla was making very substantial claims about so-called Teleforce rays that could bring down airplanes from thousands of miles away.
This single weapon would be so powerful that it would be able to destroy anything that is in a radius of 300 to 400 kilometers. This would have proved to be particularly useful in preventing wars, as it would be able to put an end to it before it started at all. Between the 1920s and 1930s, there were, in addition to Tesla, other inventors such as Marconi, Matthews, or Edwin R. Scott, who claimed to have invented the weapon. In 1923, Edwin R. Scott claimed to be the first to develop a death ray, with the ability to destroy even aircraft at a great distance. Scott claimed that he worked a decade on the artifact. A year later, Harry Matthews appeared trying to sell to the British Air Ministry what he defined as a death ray. The truth is that none of them were able to show an operating model. Soon, Tesla would arrive on the scene at the beginning of the 1930s. The genius affirmed to have invented the death ray under the name of Teleforce and maintained the claim of such achievement until the end of his days. Earlier, in the mid-1910s, Tesla had already spoken of a weapon that would mark the beginning of the end of wars as they knew it. Tesla spoke about the end of gunpowder due to armed conflicts marked by electricity, a time where his cannon would be the ultimate weapon.
I have devised a complete system. generators, motors, transformers. Everything we need to bring our civilization into the future.
Years after the fall of the Wardenclyffe Tower, with Tesla living between his great genius and inventiveness and his economic problems, he kept looking for a way to make his particle beam theory something of great importance. To do this, he went on to imagine the invention with military applications. The idea was to get some department to accept the project he had in his head. This was the reason why his dedication and efforts thereafter were directed to the service of the military. In 1934, when Tesla described the function of the weapon and the reason for its construction, he emphasized that he was all about peace. Until then, all devices that could be used for defense could also be used for the sake of aggression. This nullified the value of making improvements for the purpose of peace. Tesla developed a new idea that can be used mainly for defense. If successful and adopted, it would have revolutionized relations between nations. It would have made any country, large or small, impregnable to armies, airplanes, and other means of combat. Tesla's invention required great machinery and lots of resources, but once achieved, it would have been able to destroy anything. The Soviet Union actually invested $25,000 into the idea, asking for an exchange of plans and ideas. Upon the declassification of the Tesla's documents seized by the U.S. intelligence upon his death, it became clear that even the U.S. government was interested, among other governments.
During the Second World War, I'm sure that governments on both sides would have loved to have gotten their hands on Tesla's death ray, or at least the plans for one.
So, why couldn't Tesla develop the death ray? The answer is the same as many of the great ideas he had in life. Tesla spent his last years announcing this possibility, and despite the interest of the media, who were the ones who coined that bothersome term death ray, the financing was ultimately the one that made it impossible to carry it out. At the time of his death, Tesla had unsuccessfully approached many other companies to finally end up knocking on the doors of the governments of many allied countries, like the United Kingdom, with the sole purpose of bringing Teleforce to a successful conclusion. However, all would renounce the project due to the large investment. Dynamic theory of gravity. In the dynamic theory of gravity, Nikola Tesla explains how the gravity is related to the electromagnetic force. This is a model that deals with matter, ether, and energy, and how these three things relate to one another. It is a unified field theory that unites all the existing fundamental forces and the responses of the particles themselves in a theoretical framework. This theory, proposed by Nikola Tesla, has been so suppressed because the big powers do not want this information to be published. If you are wondering why, just remember that Tesla believed in clean energy. No one needs a soothsayer to realize how the oil and natural gas companies would obviously stand against such development. Nikola Tesla proposed that gravity is a field effect. At the time he announced his critique of Einstein's work, he was criticized by the scientific community. Today, this same theory is now being given a more serious consideration by scientists. At first, this theory was developed between 1892 and 1894, during the period when Nikola Tesla was conducting experiments with high frequency and high current potential. In 1897, when Tesla presented his theory of the dynamics of gravity, he said that all bodies emit microwaves whose voltage and frequency are determined by their electrical content and relative motion. More than 100 years ago, Nikola Tesla managed to measure the microwave radiation of our planet and concluded that it is only a couple of centimeters of wavelength. Tesla went on to say that the frequency and voltage of the microwave radiation on Earth was greatly influenced by the speed and mass of our planet. The gravitational interaction with other celestial bodies, such as the Sun, was determined by the interaction of the microwaves between the celestial bodies. Tesla confirmed this by placing two metal plates at a distance and electrifying them with high voltage, high-frequency currents, Tesla currents, or microwave. With sufficient high voltage and frequency, the space between them became solid state. He also worked with a single plate, zinc, 1/8 of an inch thick by 12 inches, weighing approximately 2 pounds, suspended in the air. Although these principles guided his research and his experiments of the future, Tesla did not announce his theory until near the end of his life, after being disappointed by the war. The dynamic theory of gravity is not mentioned as it should, and this is because the government of the United States classified the file. Unfortunately, few details were publicly stated by Tesla about his theory. The issue of how space is curved by gravitational effect, leading some to believe that Tesla did not understand Einstein's theory, was not about curving space at all, but about a curved space-time. There is disagreement about Tesla's exact understanding of Einstein's theories. The truth is that there was a great difference between Tesla and Einstein. While the former wanted the best for humanity, the second defended the big powers. According to this theory, the concept of ether is similar to what dark energy would be. Tesla said that space was not curved, and that all forces were related to each other, both the speed of sound and the speed of light and X-rays. To solve this phenomenon, he used his deep knowledge of mathematics, believed by many to be Venusian. This technology about anti-gravity has been known for a long time, but it is not convenient to make it known. It is much more lucrative to have limited energies in order to be able to impose astronomical prices, as in the case of oil. It is also better to have short-lived and polluting energies to keep the business booming. If you knew the magnificence of the numbers 3, 6, and 9, you would have the key to the universe. Apparently, with this phrase, Nikola Tesla had pointed to an enigmatic code of creation and universal energy that manifests itself as the material world. Tesla himself followed a kind of organizational ritual, always doing things in series of 3. In the rest of this article, we can see the remarkable combinations that these numbers have, especially the 9. Some of these impressive properties of 9 and their connections to 3 and 6 are based on the 360 degrees of a circle, a number that was chosen with some arbitrariness, according to some mathematicians. Others point out that it obeys a pattern observed in nature. In purely mathematical terms, a circle could have 400, 1,000 degrees, or whatever. But 360 is an especially abundant number. That is, it has many factors. It can be divided into 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 12 parts. While a number like 400 cannot be divided even into 3 equal parts of whole numbers. Likewise, 360 approaches the 365 days of the solar year, this being a kind of cosmic circle used early in astrology and astronomy by the Babylonians and other cultures. The sky was divided into the 12 signs of the zodiac, each occupying 30 degrees, an approximation to a month, the circle being considered a perfect and divine form, and therefore, the 360 was also a divine number. For modern science, however, there is no compelling explanation. Let's see some interesting sequences below. If 9 is added to any number, the result finally adds up to the same number. 1 plus 9 equals 10. 1 plus 0 equals 1. 2 plus 9 equals 11. 1 plus 1 equals 2. 3 plus 9 equals 12. 1 plus 2 equals 3, etc. On the other hand, it is known that if we add all the numbers from 1 to 10 without including the 9, we have 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8 equals 36. 3 plus 6 equals 9. Naturally, then, when adding 9, it returns the 9. Likewise, if all the numbers are added, 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8 plus 9 equals 45. 4 plus 5 equals 9. This somehow suggests that the 9 models the totality and nothingness simultaneously. It is the singularity and the emptiness at the same time. This is seen like this. Since the sum of all the digits leads to 9, so 9 plus any other digit returns to the same digit. 9 plus 5 is 14. 1 plus 4 is 5. So, literally, 9 is equal to all digits, 36, and nothing, 0. We see here a description of creation as a dynamic process, not a static one, in which totality is equal to nothing. Other interesting relationships with the 9, as pertaining to 9, are as follows. The day has 1,440 minutes, totaling 9. The day has 86,400 seconds, which total 9. The week has 10,080 minutes, which total 9. The year has 525,600 minutes, which total 9. A circle in space is formed by 360 degrees. 3 plus 6 plus 0 equal 9, whose half is 180 degrees. 1 plus 8 plus 0 equals 9, whose half is 90 degrees. 9 plus 0 equals 9, whose half is 45. 4 plus 5 equals 9, whose half is 22.5. 2 plus 2 plus 5 equal 9, whose half is 11.25. 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 5 equal 9, to infinity. Perhaps we should also mention the fact that pregnancy in humans usually lasts 9 months or 36 weeks. All over the internet, there are more people fascinated and digging for the secret behind these numbers. Yet Tesla said all these over 100 years ago. No wonder some people believe he is out of this world, literally. There are even reports that he could have been from Venus. But we wouldn't know now, would we? We never really did give him much chance.